YouTube. Um, I'm really excited to be here. So I'm going to continue. We did the introduction and we talked about the story of Greg Walker. And then we did chapter 1, which is follows and likes. Do they really matter? And we talked about the story of Anjanita Prevost. And now we are going on chapter 2. And we are going to talk about compare and contrast, proceed at your own risk. Okay. And with that, also, um, we need to think about that. And at the end of chapter 2 is the real life story of the amazing Jen Welter. She is the first NFL coach, um, the first female NFL coach. So I am excited about sharing that with you also. So I am going to show you all of the amazing people in this book that I am going to be highlighting today as our launch day continues. I'm so excited. Yay, it's a year in the making. So here we go with compare and contrast, proceed at your own risk. And as I said before, each chapter begins with a quote. And this chapter begins with a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he says, to be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment. And I love this quote so much, especially for young people, because it is just so important to be yourself. So I'm going to read it again. To be yourself in a world that is constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment, meaning for you to stay true to who you are and what you want in a world that is constantly trying to make you be something else. It is truly an accomplishment. Don't you think? I think so. I'm sure you think so too, hopefully. So, chapter 2 is compare and contrast, proceed at your own risk. And now, if you are on Facebook, LinkedIn, or YouTube right now, you can see the ticker at the bottom of the page telling you that the book is on sale at Barnes and Noble or through Amazon. And if you are on Instagram, you will see the link pinned at the bottom of the page, or you can go to my profile or my bio on any of these social media outlets and you can click on it. And the very top one is the link for you to get the book. So here we go. Compare and contrast, proceed at your own risk. So in chapter 1, we uncovered the idea of follows and likes. Do they really matter? Now that we've uncovered a little bit of your perception about yourself, okay, which you have to read the book, to read the whole first chapter to get to that point. In the world of social media, let's dig deeper in the world of comparison. How many times do you compare yourself with someone else? We all do it. It's impossible not to. I want to be like him. I want to be like her. Um, I want to have what he has. I want to have what she has. However, the moments are fleeting for us to really appreciate who we are and what we have, right? So let's dig deeper into this. Let's think again about how often you compare what you have with what someone else has. How often does that happen? Probably more frequently than you'd like to think. How often do you wish your life was more like someone else's or wish you had what they have? How often do you put others down or talk about them? Key thing here, adults and young people alike talk about other people all the time and not in a good way. Um, talk about people behind their back out of personal insecurity, jealousy, or because you honestly feel you are better than they are. Comparing ourselves to others is not a good idea. There is no one like you, and there is no one like me. No one has walked in your shoes, and you have not walked in someone else's shoes to truly understand another person's perspective. We are all completely unique individuals, and by comparing our similarities and our differences to others, we are most likely doing it to make ourselves feel better at the other person's expense. Or we're doing it and the end result is that we feel worse about ourselves because in our mind, he or she is somehow better than we are. We often take for granted what we have and want what other people have. And I will give you the perfect example of understanding the difference of perspective. Okay. So for me, growing up as a white woman, being tanned was a beautiful thing. Many Caucasian white people pay a lot of money during the winter months to have that golden brown skin tone or spend vacations on sunny islands lying in the sun most of the time. Many of them think that those who are golden brown are so lucky because they are the perfect shade of brown, right? Wrong. It wasn't until I moved to the Dominican Republic and was around other Dominican people that I got a whole new perspective on being tan. Okay. Um, Dominican people um, don't like to be in the sun. And I never understood the reason why they often cover themselves as much as possible to not be in the sun. So, why, you might ask? In their culture, um, a lighter shade of brown or being a lighter shade of brown or being a lighter color is a social status. The lighter you are comes from with the idea that you are wealthier. And I never had any idea. It sounds crazy, but to them, being lighter means that they're not in low skill labor or working outside in the sun all day. And I was shocked at this thought of this. Um, But it's interesting, isn't it? Because again, I'm going to give you another perfect example is that in many countries, people aim to be thin and think that the perfect body is one that has little curve to it, right? Wrong. However, in other countries like the Dominican Republic, um, included, beauty has curves. Um, in some countries, people pay to have liposuction to take the fat out of their body. And in other countries, people pay to put fat in and have fat injections. And until I went to the Dominican Republic, it never even dawned on me that this was something that other people did because I'm from a different culture. And so they wanted to make specific areas of their body voluptuous. So you must realize that while you may be wishing to have what someone else has, that other person may be wishing to have exactly what you have, right? Social media and what some think is beautiful or trendy can make you go crazy. People see what others have, what an influencer or A-list celebrity has, and automatically they want it too. We put others down and say things we shouldn't. We criticize, judge, gossip about others, either because we want what they have or to make ourselves feel better. Think about it. The last thing you saw on your social media feed. Think about what the last thing was that you saw on your social media feed. If you can remember, what were your thoughts? Now, for me, I was just looking on mine right before I came on here, and it was Instagram. And the last thing I saw was one of my former students and her mom in Russia, and I'm like, oh, she looks so cute. She looks so beautiful. Positive thought, right? But for you, what were your thoughts the last thing you saw? And if you don't remember, then be conscious the next time you see it. What are you saying about what you're seeing? What are you saying to yourself in your mind? What are those thoughts? And write down the first thing that comes to your mind with each post that you see. Then you can count how many negative comments or negative thoughts you're having. And then you can count how many positive thoughts you're having. And if you're having more negative thoughts than positive thoughts, you need to rework in your mind why is what I'm seeing on the internet affecting me in that way? So if you're noticing a pattern, if you're feeling you have low self-esteem, if you're constantly comparing yourself and wanting what other people have because you don't have it, then you need to be asking yourself why, and what can I do to make myself feel better, to be more confident, to believe in myself, because that's ultimately what it is that we need to be doing today and every day, lifting ourselves up. Now, even though this is a book for young people, I think that a lot of adults themselves need to be thinking about what it is that they're telling themselves too. Because ultimately, what you're telling yourself as an adult, children are listening to or hearing as well. So let's go to the story at the end of chapter 2. And the story at the end of chapter 2 is an amazing story. And you can hear the full interview of the story, or Dr. Jen Welter. She was the first female NFL coach for the Arizona Cardinals. And she wrote a book called The Big Playbook. And that's her whole story. And when you read it, you have to remember, if you're out there and someone's telling you that you can't do something, you have to remember, for her, everybody was telling her she can't play football. She's a woman. Not only is she a woman, she is a very small woman. She is only 5 feet 2 inches tall. So not only is she a woman, she is a petite woman, but she's strong. And the lessons that you can learn from her, and by reading her whole book, um, is incredible. What she went through to get to where she is today. It was that perseverance. At times she was homeless. She lived out of her car. She didn't have money. The female NFL players had to pay to play, as opposed to um, male football, where they play themselves, or where they get paid to play. Sorry. So I am going to read to you a little bit of her story from the book. It's at the end of chapter 2. Follows and likes. Is this all that I'm worth? Today is the book launch. Yay. And so you can get the book on Barnes & Noble or Amazon. And so Dr. Jen Welter, who said there can't be females in football. So here's her quote. Remember, every chapter begins with a quote from someone, and every person's story begins with a quote from them. It says, whenever someone says it's impossible only because someone hasn't done it yet. You could be that one person that does it if it's truly within your heart and soul to do it. Right? So for her, everyone was telling her she wasn't going to play football or be a part of football because she was a woman. And nor did anyone ever in a million years think that she would be the first female coach in the NFL. So I'm going to read to you a little bit of her story. Throughout history, females have always been compared to their male counterparts as inferior. While the 20th century brought great strides to changing the way women are viewed, there's still a long way to go before complete equity is seen between the two. And one place that is predominantly a male world is in sports. However, there have been those iconic women who are paving the way for the younger generations of girls to be seen as an equal instead of an inferior counterpart. And one of these women is Dr. Jen Welter. She is the first female NFL coach in history, proving that when anyone says you can't or it has never been done before, her story is one to bring inspiration and hope to say there is always a first for everything. It was in football where Jen heard for the first time that there was a difference between what girls can do and what boys could do. And she has made it her mission to break the stereotypes of other young girls growing up. However, the journey to get to this moment of equity and strength was a difficult one, powered by extreme desire, determination, and the love of the game. As a child growing up, Jen always wanted to be either an actress or an athlete. And so she was excellent in math, and anything that she had to do to complete just drove something inside of her to compete, not complete, to compete. So she loved to be social and do as much as possible that she could on her own. And so Jen Welter then came from her drive and her perseverance. But before she played football, okay, there was tennis. She loved tennis, but her coach told her that she would never do anything good or amount to anything because she was too short. Now, tennis then transformed to football and her desire to want to play football. However, she didn't get into football in high school. It wasn't until she got to college where she then went in and started playing rugby. Now, you can imagine she's 5 feet 2 inches tall, and rugby is pretty much football, but without any protection, right? And so she's small, but what it did was it helped her to learn how to better play football when she had that opportunity and when that came across her path, because she was able to ultimately learn how to not get hurt in football with the padding and everything on because she had played rugby before that. Now, the book explains this much better than I do off the top of my head here right now. In her book, The Big Playbook by Jen Welter, is astounding. It's her whole specific story from beginning to end, every small detail. So I highly recommend you getting that book as well while you're getting this book, Follows and Likes, Is This All That I'm Worth? And so what Jen, the really important lesson to learn from Jen is she knew she couldn't control her height. That's her height. That's what she was given. That's what she was told. God graced her with 5 feet 2 inches tall. She knew she couldn't control that, but there were the things that she could control. She couldn't make herself taller. However, she could make herself stronger. And by making herself stronger, she was able to play in a different way by using her strength. She would go to the gym and make sure that she was able to be stronger. She would work on her speed. and she could get faster. So she didn't focus on what she couldn't control. She focused on what she could control. And that made all the difference. This that she could control made her more competitive and gave herself a better edge. Now, um, for those of you who may play Madden, she was in Madden 20. She is also featured in one of the, or I think a couple of the Minecrafts, as one of the athletes in Minecraft as well. Her advice to young people that I am going to end this live session with is you need to take those little steps into understanding what it is that you want. Don't just automatically start with the big picture in mind because it's going to be more difficult. Take your goal and break it down into things you can achieve in windows, in small successes, in order to get you to the big goal. And I think that's where a lot of people today get held up. They're like, I see this, I want this. They see the end product, they see that person on social media and what they are doing today. But it's the journey that you need to focus on, the small steps. Remember, if you look at the Great Wall of China, it's massive. It's miles and miles and miles long. However, if you look down, it was built brick by brick. So don't get, as she said, is the advice that Jen said, don't get caught up in the big picture. Have that goal, but then each day take those small steps to get there. And her story and the small steps that she took to get there, which were up and down, up and down. Like I said, she was sleeping out of her car at times, just so she could do what she loved. And now today, she is instilling that strength and that wisdom in many other young girls. So thank you for joining me. Thank you, Angela and Sabrina and everyone on here for joining me. I can't tell who's watching on LinkedIn or Facebook because it doesn't pop up in my feed, but thank you. And I will be back in about an hour to go with chapter 3. And for our story after chapter 3 is from who's shown it after Barb Majeski. She was on the Today Show yesterday. She was featured on the Today Show yesterday, and so I'm excited to bring her strength from her adversity that she shares with us all. So I will see you guys back here in a little while, and hope you enjoyed this